Hey astronauts, it's me, Brandy, and welcome back to Astro-Tarot Research. So today's video is a little bit different. I decided that I wanted to do a video on how to read tarot cards for beginners because I know a lot of you have said that you learned a lot by the way I read cards during my videos, so I thought that this would be helpful. Now, this is in no means a full conclusive way to read tarot. This is just some tips and tricks and ways of looking at things based on how I personally read tarot cards. Everyone has their own unique techniques. Let's not waste any more time and let's begin. So I have bought one of the most popular decks. This is the Rider-Waite Tarot deck, and I'll probably just put it on the screen here. First things first with tarot cards, my first tip would be deciding what type of reader you want to be. Now, if you're just reading for yourself, then you can completely skip this step. You don't really even need to really think about it. But if you're a person who plans on reading for other people, decide what message and how you want to frame your message. What I mean by this is, a lot of times when people go to receive a tarot reading, or maybe they're click on a pick a card video, whatever the case may be, most people will probably want to hear a more positive message. Giving a lot of positive feedback is going to be very beneficial towards having a very huge platform. The reason for this is most of the time people sort of will go to tarot reading or spiritual fields in order to meet spiritual emotional fulfillment, and it's almost seen as an escapism, or maybe I should say seen as a way to step out of reality and into a space that just feels a little bit more comforting, a little bit less conflicting, less chaotic. A lot of people who are involved in the spiritual fields have been through a lot of chaos. I mean, that's why we're all here, because we've all been through some very turbulent times and we're looking for some positive reinforcement. Most of the time, people like to hear that things are going to be okay. It's more like reaffirming what someone wants to hear. Now, I don't want that to sound like bad or good. It is what it is, you know what I mean? Like, people just want to hear positive things. Who wants to hear a bunch of horrible stuff all the time, right? So you could decide that that's a good avenue to go. It's actually very great because it gives a lot of people a sense of comfort. It gives people a sense of peace, and people feel like they feel connected, and it creates a community. It's a wonderful way to read, actually. There's another way that I prefer to read, which is a little bit more balanced, the positive and the, I guess, negative. You could just say realistic. And the reason that I choose to personally read this way is because I found that it can be detrimental sometimes to people to only hear positive things, only because life doesn't seem to work out that way. I know personally for me, I don't like when I only hear what somebody thinks I want to hear, just because it feels like false advertising. I don't think I'm passing any judgments on anyone. I think both methods of reading are actually very valid. But I can also understand how some people are going to be put off because they don't want to hear that things may continue to be tough for a while, or they may not exactly get how they want. That's what I mean by deciding what type of reader you want to be. The second thing under deciding what type of reader you want to be is, do you want to incorporate other occultisms? Maybe you're somebody who's really good at runes, and so you want to incorporate runes into your tarot reading. Maybe you're somebody who does a lot of, I don't even know what this is called, but color reading. Like, you can read auras, and you know, like orange is associated with like happy, creativity, sexuality, or blue is associated with sadness, intelligence, and things like that. So that would be another way to read. You saw this card here, which is the Two of Pentacles, and you see that it's surrounded by the blue. That would indicate, okay, so this is somebody who is using their intelligence to think, because blue is one of the signifying colors of intelligence, and it makes sense that we have this Two of Pentacles surrounded by blue because it's going between two frames of thought. Another way to read, which is one of the first ways that I stepped into occultism, which is reading through music. So a lot of people can put their MP3 iPods, radios, whatever on shuffle, or just listen to sounds around them for signals. That is another way that I read. I don't really do it that much on this channel, but let's say you get a song, the song relates to the reading, and you can incorporate that song into the reading somehow, and it can help clarify the message. There's tons and tons of ways to read a tarot card. Let's give an example here. We have the Queen of Cups, and on the Queen of Cups we have cherubs, the little angel figures. And the thing about cherubs, if you know the history and if it goes back to biblical texts and stuff, cherubs were sort of seen as guarding the gates of the Garden of Eden. And an interpretation and connection to the Queen of Cups, what we have here is we have someone who is like guarding this frutility, this sort of abundanceness, somebody who doesn't fully throw their emotions and the full capacity of their ability to nurture out there. They're a little bit more, I wouldn't say guarded with their emotions, but they're definitely someone who has a little bit more control over their emotions, who doesn't let their emotions rule them. So that's how we can connect the cherubs. You can even see the queen is turned sideways, so you can't see her full figure and her full force. She doesn't show her full self and all of her thoughts, emotions, creativity. So some other tips before I get into some basic questions is you can always keep a journal, which is something that I did in the beginning when I was learning tarot, where I would pull a card every day and say, how's my day going to be? Or I would ask questions like, what will I think of today's lunch? How will the selection be in the cafeteria? When's the best time to like buy something? And I would just write that, like some sort of question every day. And I would write what I would think that it would mean. And then I would write, you know, what actually happened that day or the answer to that question. The second way to learn tarot is to ask questions to things that you already have the answer to, okay? And that's a really, really great way to learn how to do something. So I can ask the question, for example, how do I feel right now? And the card that I pull is the King of Pentacles. So I'm actually feeling pretty good right now. I'm in my element. I'm very comfortable. I'm just trying to make sure that I give out really practical information for you guys, which is why I got this Pentacle card rather than the Sword card, because the Sword card was sort of like I'd be encouraging you guys to think for yourselves, versus I'm trying to just give you practical ways to approach reading something and performing a skill that you could even potentially use as a career if you so want to. Very King of Pentacles right now. I even got the crown, don't I? So this is just another way, another tool in order to learn the tarot really fast, is just to ask questions to things that you already have the answer to. Let's go on to some popular ways to ask questions. I know one of the most popular things that a lot of people are very, very into is going to be their money and their honey, right? And more than likely, you could just look up tarot videos right now. A lot of the questions are going to revolve about love, romance, connection, and then you're gonna have some that have to do with career. And then the third option is going to be sort of ego-based questions. And ego-based questions are sort of like, what does this person think of me? What kind of impression do I leave on people? What kind of beauty am I? You know, how attractive am I? Things like that would be ego-based questions. Basically, any sort of information in which people are trying to gauge how others are perceiving them or how others feel about them. They have to do with feeling wanted and feeling desired, which is a pretty common thing that, you know, all of us humans feel, right? Let's ask questions based on that so you guys can get a feel of just how exactly you're supposed to read. Oh, before I get started, there's one more thing. You see these major Arcana cards versus these minor Arcana cards. Gosh, I've known tarot for years, but I can never know if I'm saying, is it Arcana? The way that I see the difference between them is I read major Arcana cards as a little bit more difficult to change the future of versus minor ones, which you have a lot more control over your destiny, and that's how I choose to see them. Second way that I choose to see them is Major Arcana cards can tend to relate to major turning points or major events versus minor Arcana cards, which they're sort of like a little bit more forgettable. For example, I remember one time I've gotten the Death card to represent changing a habit, and it was a habit that I had for years and I was looking to change it. I think that question I asked was, what would happen if I just quit doing this today? I got the Death card. Pretty much I would quit that habit, and that has been the result. When I started that day, that habit pretty much died out for the most part. So let us get into some example questions, and I'm gonna use some really popular questions that I've seen people ask on YouTube so we can get some examples of how to read the card. One of the most popular questions, which is, who will I marry? So this falls into love category, and it also tells you something which could help you learn how to describe people. And a way to gauge and understand how to describe people is to ask questions about people you know. So you can ask, oh, what is my dad like? And you can pull a card and have that describe your dad. So you know in the future when you have that card in front of you and it's describing someone new, then you know that they're gonna probably have those qualities. So I pulled the Seven of Pentacles. The first way we can tackle is think about the basic meaning of the Seven of Pentacles. So the Seven of Pentacles has to do with thinking about making a decision. It comes from a place of having had some success, and now we're at a point of deciding what we want to do with that success. How do we want to invest in the future? Where do we want to go from here? That is pretty much the baseline meaning of the Seven of Pentacles. It's about taking time to pause and reflect and deciding where you want to go next. The second thing that we know from the Seven of Pentacles is because you're deciding where you want to go next, in order to decide where you want to go, you need to have a good idea of where you are and where you have been and the directions that you've taken. So we know from that when we have that sort of mentality going on, we know this is a person who knows what they have, who has some sort of comfortability, some sort of stability behind them, and is very aware of the directions and decisions that they have made in the past. Sorry guys, I'm getting like dirt under from my nail. I'm just like, as soon as I see it, it's just habit. I just take it out. We know is what we have, where we've been, and where we want to go is basically what we're deciding based off of our own desires. We can take this to mean that you're going to marry somebody who puts a lot of thought into where it is that they want to go in life, or we could say that you're going to marry someone who maybe at the time of you guys getting married, that this person is going through a change of direction in life. They're taking some different steps in whether that's their career, whether that's them moving, whether, you know, they're changing jobs. It could be pretty much anything at this point because we only have one card. If you want to clarify that, I would suggest to pull a different card. Another way to read this is we can look at the fact that we have Pentacles, and Pentacles to me usually represent stability, wealth, earthiness. And what I mean by that is like things that are tangible, things I can touch and hold. So I have these little rock things, I can touch that, I can feel that, I can like smell things, I can touch my hair, I can taste things, I can drink water. So anything that you can touch, feel, taste, smell would be like a pentacle energy going on here. So we know whatever it is that this person is assessing about, it's something that has either provided them with tangible items, or it's something that maybe they're literally just really thinking about their own assets, like their own physical wealth, or maybe they're thinking about a house, a car. Not only that, but Pentacles represent your physical body, like your physical self. So we can get the Seven of Pentacles to they have a change in direction in their diet, they have a change in direction in their workout plan. Whatever it is, something that's tangible, that's being physically changed, is something that we know is going to be happening with a pentacle there. The third way that I would read it is Pentacles relate to earth signs, and earth signs rule the second house. They rule the sixth house, and it rules the 10th house. And these are known as the financial houses. Hence, Pentacles are usually related somehow to finances and work. And they're also the work houses, or the houses of self-esteem, income, and physical body or reputation. That can relate to wands as well, especially if it's like the first house, but definitely the second and the sixth house are going to play a huge signifier on your health. One thing I know about this is there's a good possibility that this can do with this person's health or their daily routine. It usually has to do with work situations. That's the main thing, work, job, finances, I've seen personally, but the cards may communicate with you in a different way. In terms of like sixth house, that could be health. Maybe this person has something going on with their health and they know that they need to reassess and really think about things in order to change where they're going in the future. It could have to do with anything to do with, I'm sick of being in traffic. Well, maybe I should move closer, or maybe I should get a different job, you know, etc. Or maybe it is that you're like, oh, I feel underappreciated in the job that I have, so maybe I want to change my job, maybe I want to change my field, whatever it may be. As it relates to 10th house is sort of like your reputation. It rules your work environment in a sense, and it can also mean your bosses or your authority figures, people above you. This person is either being reassessed by their bosses, or maybe they're thinking about their bosses and they're wondering what their bosses think of them, the impression that they're making on higher ups. So that could be something that you get for this person. As you can see, there's like so many different angles that you can read. So you could be marrying someone who is really concerned about what their bosses think of them or their reputation. You could be really married to someone who really thinks about their assets and is always planning towards the future. And this could also be a person who is really thinking about their health and wanting to make some changes in their lifestyle. Maybe they want to gain more assets. Maybe they want to invest in stocks. Maybe they want to buy cryptocurrency. Whatever it is, this person is looking to bring more tangibility into their life and to build upon their success. And that's the main message that we want to get. But let's ask another question. Now, I don't particularly have someone in mind, but I know this is a very popular question that people like to ask. So how does so-and-so feel about me? We pulled the 9 of Wands, and I'm gonna put that on the screen somewhere. But the 9 of Wands, if we take it at its base meaning, it's a card of defending your position. It's a card similar to the 7 of Coins. It's a card that's already representing already having success or already being established. However, with the 9 of Wands, on the card we have a wounded warrior. So it's somebody who is tired of fighting. It's somebody who is like really on their last leg, and they really aren't able to take on much more because they've already exerted so much energy. However, this person is somebody who's usually very guarded and somebody who doesn't really let too many people in. This is somebody on high alert. The 9 of Wands is a card that is about endurance, and it's about not taking no for an answer. It's somebody who is pretty much in it for the long haul. When we get a question on how does so-and-so feel about me, and we pull the card, the 9 of Wands, this is probably someone who is either going to feel very protective towards you or something, or this is going to be the opposite, where this person is going to feel like they need to keep their guard up around you, like they can't really trust you, or it's hard for them to let you in. For this card, I would use a clarifier. So we're gonna clarify this pretend situation of how does so-and-so feel about me. We get the King of Cups. Now, there's 2 ways you can read it. This is where it comes down to personal choice. So the way I personally read is when I get contrasting elements, which would be fire and water, they fizzle each other out, so the energy is not as great being together, or earth and air, those two have a lot of conflicting energy with each other. Another reader may choose to keep both energies upright and read them just as is, as if it was just the 9 of Wands and the King of Cups just coming together and combining their meanings. Also, you can keep in mind that some people will use reversals. I would read this as somebody struggling to open up to you and feeling as if it's hard for them to be vulnerable and to express their feelings because they believe that they will be hurt. Now, if we want to read these 2 things together, we could just read this as somebody feeling a strong amount of emotions towards you, a strong amount of passions towards you. If we're reading this without any conflict, King of Cups is somebody who has very, very strong feelings, and the Nine of Wands is like somebody feeling like this paternal figure. Let's say we had got the King of Cups reversed, then that would be indicative of, similar to what I had previously said before, they have to be guarded around you, and not only that, but they feel like they will not be able to act in a rational manner, because the King of Cups, although they may be aware of their emotions, they feel like they are not in control of them. They may be easily angered, upset, they can get triggered easily. This is somebody who is fighting in order to not be triggered. That would be somebody who feels as if you trigger them, okay? It's one way I would choose to read it. Just make up those rules for yourself, and it'll be a lot clearer to what the cards are trying to say. It's all depending on the system that you lay out for yourself. Let's say we wanted to pull 3 cards, because sometimes I notice a lot of people will like when you have a lot of cards out on the table. I'm not sure why, but like, to each their own. I'm not here to judge. And we have the Queen of Cups. That's not going to be too dissimilar to what we've already got here. It could be saying that somebody feels as if you would probably be a good match with them. It doesn't have to be romantic, but if this were a romantic reading, this would say, oh, I think somebody is a good match towards me, but I feel like there are some topics and things that we disagree on. One way that I read the Nine of Wands is somebody who has very, very strong opinions or beliefs. When we have this, it's almost like saying we have 2 people who may be struggling to see eye to eye. However, because it's the King and Queen of Wands, we know that there is a lot of love between them. It can also be saying that they're willing to work it out and to let go of their differences in order to form a smoother union. And the reason I say that they would probably be more willing to work it out is because we have the King and Queen of Cups together, connected, and we don't have this Nine of Wands between them. Now, if we were to have the Nine of Wands between the King and Queen of Cups, then I would say, oh, they're gonna have some struggles probably working out their differences. But with this being here, it looks to me as if this person, probably more than likely the King of Cups person, is going to let it go. Last example question. The question will be, how do people perceive me? We get the Four of Pentacles. So the base meaning of the Four of Pentacles is somebody who is scared to take a risk and take a chance. Somebody who can be a little bit guarded. Someone who wants to protect their assets, and somebody who, honestly, I get the Four of Pentacles to having a lot of fears and a lot of anxieties about things not working out for them. They clench on so tightly to the status quo that they forget, in order to gain in life, in order to build, in order to move forward, that you have to take risks and you have to take chances, or else you will remain stagnant. So I get the Four of Pentacles sometimes. In the case of how it's perceiving someone, is people will generally perceive you to be very successful. However, they can perceive you to be very much like shy, or like afraid to approach them, or just like maybe you don't want to talk to people or something like that. In the worst case scenario, it would be somebody who's arrogant. It usually doesn't appear that much. It's usually somebody who's a little bit shy and reserved. I've noticed with the Four of Pentacles here, and that's one way you can interpret that. Let's add more to it. Let's say, what is this? We say the Four of Pentacles and the Page of Cups. So we can read this as if it were a sentence. That's one way that I used to read all the time. Sometimes I'll do it if I want like a speed round. Somebody who is scared to talk to people. Somebody who is shy about their crushes, like afraid to approach their crushes. Somebody who is scared to take a chance at something creative. Like you're combining these 2 messages to form a sentence. Somebody who's afraid to get out their comfort zone and to socialize. We can even add one more card here, and let's just throw out something, and then we get the Five of Wands. It's like somebody who is scared to speak to others because they kind of feel like maybe other people will be trying to either compete with them. They kind of feel like maybe people might judge them in a sense, or it might cause a lot of conflict. It may take them into a space that's very combative. It may feel like people aren't going to be welcoming towards them. They're afraid that other people won't really connect with them or see things the way that they're going to see them. That's another way we can look at it. We can read this as I would with the elements reversed, feeling like somebody's not interested in what they have to say. A lot of times I can get the 5 of Wands in like a social setting to be like banter, or being like, oh, they're just kind of like, you know, making jokes with each other. With this card here, it can be that someone may be afraid that they're not going to be like clever enough to keep up with everyone else. Maybe there's a lot of inside jokes coming on, and this person may feel like they're out of the loop, like they can't connect with people. People may perceive this, whoever this imaginary person is, to be a little bit more soft-hearted and someone who's not going to be there for all of the joking around, the talking mess about each other. You can read it as a story. One thing that I didn't even mention is you have this one person looking straight ahead. You have this person trying to reach this person, but this person isn't even looking at them. And you have these people completely in the chaos over here. They may see you as somebody who needs someone to directly speak to them in order for them to join the group. May see you as someone who won't go out and actively go up to a group of people and just start talking. They may see you as somebody who's waiting for that invitation to be a part of something. There's so many different ways that you can read a tarot card. That's a way that I will occasionally read things too, especially if you get a combination of cards that you may be a little bit like, what is going on here? I have no clue what the message is trying to tell me. So let's pay some major arcana, and we're gonna keep this question the same as what does this person think of me, because we need some major arcana in here. And let's just pick the Hangman. Perfect. Let's go to the basic meaning. Once again, the Hangman is a card in which we're talking about somebody who's letting go. Somebody is realizing they're not in control. Somebody who's making sacrifices for the greater good, or for someone else, or for a cause, or something that they believe in. This is someone who is hanging in suspension. They're just a waiting period in time. This can also have to do with changing your mind, seeing things from a different point of view, which is why the person is upside down. Let's say you got this card for how somebody is perceiving you as the Hangman. They may see you as somebody who is willing to change their perspective on things, somebody who is maybe a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more reserved, somebody who's not trying to control everyone or everything, and they recognize that they don't really have that power. They may see you as somebody who's very laid back. They could see you as somebody who has a very strong sense of beliefs and a high sense of morality. We probably want to clarify that, right? We want to see which one of these things this person is thinking of me as. But we have the 8 of Swords, right? If we're clarifying the Hangman by the 8 of Swords, then I would take this to be very literal. I would take this to be somebody who's very reserved, somebody who's holding back, somebody who isn't exerting any sort of force onto people. They're just sort of like in the background, just waiting in there, keeping their peace, keeping their time. But let's say it was clarified by the Magician, then that's somebody who has a plan, somebody who is at home with their creative energy, and somebody who realizes they can't control everything, but what they can control is their own creativity and what they can put out there, their own message. The Magician card does have to do with taking creative control and having some sort of mastery of the world around you, but not in the sense of like, oh, I can control the rain or the weather. It just means I can control the information and the ideas that I put out there. And I recognize that sometimes it may take some time for things to fester and warm up and take shape in the way that I would like them to, but I realize that time will come. You can even see that light around the Hangman's head, which represents being at one with a higher power and God, and being connected to the life beyond in a way. Then we can even do the Hermit, okay, which is kind of similar to the 8 of Swords, as somebody being very reserved when we combine these two messages together. If we're reading them separately, then we're gonna read it as somebody who is very thoughtful, someone who takes their time to understand something, someone who prefers their privacy, someone who is probably not one to put on airs, somebody who's probably not trying to keep up with the Joneses, someone who isn't really all that invested in, you know, the social medias and the social happenings of the world, somebody who recognizes that the more they know, the less they know. They would probably see you as somebody who's very humble and somebody who, in a way, very isolated, because both of these cards can represent isolation, especially if we go back to the history of the Hangman, which has to do with being publicly shamed. Obviously, the Hermit having to do with being ostracized. They may see you as a bit of a loner. I hope those tips have been useful. I tried to give examples, but I feel like for something like this, it would probably take a lot of serious. I didn't even go into numerology and all that stuff and everything that you could possibly have in the combination of these cards right here. Sorry if I keep looking at the camera thing. It's just that this camera sometimes goes out of focus. So if you see my eyes wandering that way, that's the whole reason. There's so many different ways to connect with the messages of the card. It's just really trying to figure out which way connects the best with you. I hope this video was helpful and I will see you next time. Au revoir.